Welcome to Arkansas First Reports, where we bring you the latest updates and decisions on issues that matter most to conservatives and our guests, our great state. I'm your host, Kandi Cox, and today I'm honored to have Jerry Cox from Family Council joining us. Family Council has been a leading voice in pro-life and pro-family policies in Arkansas. And today we're going to discuss their legislative priorities for this session. Jerry, welcome to Arkansas First Reports.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate your show. And I'm ready to get into it.
Ready to dive, yeah. Well, you know, the one thing very near and dear to my heart is pregnancy resource centers and ministries like mine, where we help women that are in crisis pregnancies. And the first thing I wanted to start with is I know that you guys are working on trying to get $2 million allocated for the Pregnancy Help Organization's grants that started, 2 years ago?
It's been about 4 years.
4 years,
actually, yeah.
Okay, and that is budgeted through the Department of Finance Administration. Can you give us an overview of what this funding will support and why it's a priority for Family Council?
Well, it's a priority for Family Council, but it's also a priority for the entire state, because now that we have made abortion mostly illegal in Arkansas, it's time for the church and the community and the legislature and everybody to step up and say, we're going to say abortion's illegal, but we're also going to provide good alternatives for people that are in a crisis pregnancy. And we need to do that. That's our moral obligation to do that. So the people who are really on the front lines of this issue are the pregnancy centers. And there are almost 50 around the state. Most of these are faith-based. Many of them are organized through churches and other charities. But their mission is to help women and girls who have an unintended pregnancy and don't know what to do. And so we said, the state needs to come alongside these good ministries out here and help them with funding. Because I don't know of any pregnancy center that says, we have all the money we need. No, they need help financially. And so we went to the legislature and Governor Sanders and others and said, let's provide funding for these good ministries out here and help them do more of what they do, which is not only help girls choose life, but also help girls and women with after the baby comes and having a job, learning to balance a checkbook, finding a place to live. All those things are really important. So we looked around the country and found out Arkansas is behind. Texas is putting $50 million a year into their pregnancy centers. Tennessee's putting a lot of money in there. So Arkansas started out with $1 million, which is real money, and the centers could apply for grants. I think every center that asked for money got it.
Right.
I really believe they did. And so we went along with $1 million for a couple of years. And then last year, the legislature said, this is working. We're going to go to $2 million. And so most of that money has been allocated now. And so we're going to look at another $2 million for the coming year so that these centers can apply. And I think the grants, don't quote me on this, but I think some of the grants were like $40,000. Mm-hmm. So imagine $40,000 extra for a pregnancy center to do more of the good work they do. That's a game changer for some.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. How confident are you that the funding will pass with this legislation?
I think there's a strong commitment on the part of the legislature and, as far as I know, the governor, to continue this funding. In fact, a year ago, there was a big push not to expand any programs. And so one of the programs that was expanded, and there's just like, I count them on one hand probably,
right,
was funding for the pregnancy centers, because I think the governor sees the importance of this. And so it's being treated very favorably right now by lawmakers.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. That's wonderful. As someone who works with women in crisis pregnancies on a daily basis, it is. You said something that really struck a chord with me, is that it's time for the churches and our conservatives to really step up. And one of the things, the points that I am constantly trying to make with people is that this is an area where we have failed greatly. And these women, I work with women all the time that are, on the streets, and, the resources available to them are slim. And so I was really glad when I saw, I learned about it 2 years ago.
Right.
And anyways, it benefited a ministry that I'm involved in, and so I was really glad about this. And so I'm really thankful to hear that it looks like it's going to pass through this year, because it truly does make a difference in reaching to these women.
And these centers that want to apply, the grants are administered by the Department of Finance and Administration.
Right.
And there's a grant application process that you go through. And it's really pretty simple. You tell them what you want to do with the money. And if they agree that that's in the scope of the money, they give you the money. And then you do with it what you promised.
Right.
And tell them how you did that.
Right.
And everybody's good.
Exactly.
And a lot of people were afraid there was going to be this long arm of the state follow that money and tell the centers you got to tear down your crosses and throw out your Bibles and all that. And there's none of that. In fact, Department of Finance and Administration has said over and over again, you can have all the Bibles and crosses you want in your center. You just use the money to buy diapers like you promised you would, and we're good.
Right.
And or whatever it is that you're buying.
Right. Providing the resources. Yes, that's right. Okay, well, House Bill 1139, let's talk about that for a second. This is being proposed, known as the Released Time Education Act. This bill would allow public school students to be excused from school for religious and moral instruction for up to 5 hours a week. Can you explain why this bill is important and how it aligns with our values as conservatives?
Well, first of all, there's a misunderstanding that our schools need to be anti-religious, anti-Christian, and all that. And maybe there are some that have acted that way. But imagine this. Imagine that First Baptist Church creates a Bible study for teenagers. And then they invite students from the school to be able to leave campus and come over and do Bible study for 30 or 40 minutes, just like you would study English or science or math, except they leave campus and go do that. They do so with the knowledge and permission of the parent, so the parent is ultimately responsible if they want their child to go over to First Baptist Church and study the Bible. But if everybody's agreeable to that, then the school would have to make an allowance for the student to do that. And, I think people say, I don't know if I like the separation of church and state, whatever, all that stuff. Our worldview governs everything about us. And most of our worldview in the West is based on documents like the Ten Commandments and the Sermon on the Mount and these other things. And so for students to understand that, that's really making them a more rounded person and giving them a better education. And so other states have been doing this for years and years. And we've been behind here in Arkansas. And so they could do it right now. Hear me on this. Schools could do this right now, but they're afraid.
Yes.
And so what we need is legislation that assures them you can do this, and here's the law. Because there's a Supreme Court case from, I think, 50 years ago or more that says schools can allow students to do this. Wow. And so they could already do it. And it would be my hope that, once again, churches and ministries would step up, offer these programs, and if the students want to take part and the parents are agreeable, then they all partner with the school for the kid to leave and go do Bible study during the school day.
That's wonderful. You know, you said something a while ago. People say, oh, separation of church and state. We hear that all the time. But the fact of the matter is it's so misquoted. There is no, separation. We're always having, as conservatives, to clarify that. So saying that, probably going to have some legal challenges if this bill passes.
There may be some people that fuss about it. But the thing is, the Supreme Court has already backed it up that you can do this. And there might be somebody fuss about it, but it doesn't make anybody go study the Bible. It just says you can.
Right.
If you want to.
Right. And I liked it.
Yeah, it is. And so you think of all the things that students learn between kindergarten and 12th grade. Is it so bad that they might understand a little bit about the Bible and what it means to be a Christian? I think that's a good thing to learn.
Right.
So anyway, we'll see how it goes. A number of states have had this for years. It works there. It'll work here. We just need to get the law passed.
Okay, very good. Now that kind of leads us into the LEARNS Act and homeschooling, right? It's been a major, the LEARNS Act has been a major education reform in Arkansas. And from a conservative perspective, what impact has this legislation had, particularly with homeschoolers?
Oh my, it's a game changer for some homeschool families because we know that a lot of families, mom and dad both have to work just to barely make ends meet. Imagine if those families could homeschool their students and get reimbursed for the education expenses. That might be just enough for them to be able to get over the hump and then be able to do that. Or if they can't do that, maybe grandma could do that for the kids.
Right.
But it's a publicly funded education. It's just not in a government building or riding a yellow school bus.
Right.
Because people, if we adjust our thinking and say, I believe in a publicly funded education, then that could occur in this studio. It could occur around a kitchen table. It doesn't have to be at the schoolhouse. And that's the shift in thinking, I think, that people need to embrace because, let's face it, I think most of us would say if you averaged out all the public schools in Arkansas, they're subpar in many ways. There may be, maybe you would say, we have a great school in our community. Well, I hope you do. And that's good if you do. But that's not true everywhere.
Right.
I spent 11 years as a classroom teacher. I taught in the Delta, in one of the poorest areas of the state, for 5 years. Then I taught at Pulaski Academy, a private school in Little Rock. And I promise you, the level of academics at the private school far exceeded what was going on in the public school where I taught. And whose fault is that? I don't know. I can't say. It is the way it is. But imagine if we open this whole education monopoly up to where a student could take that money and go to a private school.
Right.
Because a lot of people can't afford a private school. It's expensive.
Yes.
But this might enable them to do that. Same thing with homeschooling. You can get reimbursed for your legitimate education expenses as a homeschooler up to about $7,000 per kid. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to get $7,000, but it does mean that your education expenses ought to be mostly covered under this. And I think that's a good thing because, Kandi, if you had all the homeschoolers in Arkansas in one place,
right,
they would be far and away the largest school district in Arkansas.
Yes.
Bigger than Little Rock, bigger than all the big ones in Northwest Arkansas. And in fact, you take the 30-something-thousand homeschoolers in Arkansas, they are saving the state of Arkansas over $300 million every single year. And they are educating their kids. They're producing a better product. They have no buildings, no school buses, no paid administrators. Nope. It's all free to the state of Arkansas. We're not a drain on the state in that way at all. And so it works amazingly well. And the proof is in the product of what's been produced. And so I just think that we need to encourage these alternative ways of educating kids, because if we keep doing the same thing we've always done, we'll get the same results.
Exactly. When a parent that is homeschooling their child, how do they apply for that relief?
Well, there's an application process through the Department of Education, and there will be a testing element in there. As best I can tell, it's not going to be onerous. They don't have to make a certain score. But if you're enrolled as a homeschooler, you'll have to be tested, as will the private school kids. So there'll be some testing there. But the governor made an excellent point. She said, if a student is being bullied in a school and threatening suicide, and we pull them out and they homeschool, they shouldn't have to go back to that awful school just because they can't make a certain score on an academic test, because the child's life and their development are much broader than just academics.
Yes.
And you and I both have known people that barely graduated high school, but they're tremendously successful in business and dealing with people and all that. And so I would just say that I think this has the potential to revolutionize the state of Arkansas, because we're always behind when it comes to education. And this is an opportunity for our kids to get a really good education and move ahead.
And let's be honest, kids learn differently, right?
They do.
And I know you have 4 boys. I have, 7 kids, 3 boys and 4 girls, and they each learn different. Their style of learning is different. I have some kids that can get up, pop up in the morning, and by homeschooling, we're saying teachers, the agony of my kids that are very crazy in Florida's. Right. But you get to take each child and cater, when you homeschool, that education to help they learn. Some I can sit in front of a computer or books, and some we have to be very hands-on, and some we need to use our hands to learn, right?
Oh, absolutely. A friend of mine, jokingly, but kind of true, said, I think school is designed for girls. It's
just different. I disagree.
Well, and I think here's the point. Whether you're a boy or a girl, there's some kids, if you tell them to sit at a desk, be quiet, read their book, don't wiggle, don't say anything, they're about to bust.
Yes.
But if you get them out and let them build something, dig a hole in the ground, whatever it is they need to do, then all of a sudden their brain is engaged while their hands are working. And people learn that way. And so, but see, that's the beauty of homeschooling. You can tailor the education to the way that kid learns. Yes. It's a plan tailored specifically for them by somebody who loves that child unconditionally.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful learning environment once you get that going. And so anyway, I love it. We homeschool. My wife homeschooled our 4 boys up until junior high, and then we put them in private school, Christian school. But it was a good thing for us and for a lot of people.
We're with homeschooling ours, going back to that, our youngest son, and he's our senior this year. So this is our last. This will be our last little one. But he would get out his cars, and he is on the spectrum, and he would line around his books. He would line his cars around, and then we would have kinetic sand over here, because sometimes we have to drive our car while we're doing work. But everything was so particular. But he had his cars there so he could have his hands movement. He could stimulate his mind doing his work, and it's a beautiful thing. You can't do that in public.
I remember when I was in 7th grade, my science teacher said, boys, we're going to build an electric motor. Everybody in here is going to have a chance to build an electric motor. And I built one, and it worked. And I thought, I love science. But if you'd have made me just sit in the desk and read about electric motors, I would have been bored.
Yes. Yeah.
But the fact that I built one, and I could still build it today, I believe, if you gave me the materials.
Right. Right. That's awesome. Well, thank you for that. Now, this was, again, real close to my heart. And, we're ending the January. We're coming to an end, right, which is Sanctity of Life Month.
Right.
And we just finished this summer fighting, right, against the abortion amendment that was trying to get on the ballot. And it failed to make it to the ballot, which I am very thankful for.
Right.
Are there discussions about revising the language and bringing it back? What are you hearing out there?
Well, first of all, I think if you take the pro-abortion people at their word, they are going to write another amendment and come back and try to circulate petitions and put it on the ballot in 2026.
Right.
It would be a year from this November would be their next opportunity. So knowing that, we need to figure out, how do we get ready?
That's it.
How do we get ready? So
We can't sleep on this issue.
here's one thing that I think probably does need to be done. The abortion law that we have right now that says abortion is illegal except to save the life of the mother. And it has some language in there about medical emergencies and some things like that are supposed to give the doctors guidance about how do you treat a woman that's in a bad way, and what happens if you do have to terminate the pregnancy, how you do that within the bounds of the law.
Right.
I think the law is very clear, but not everybody has looked at it as much as I have, nor the lawyers we work with. So I think maybe there is some clarifying language that could be done to add to this law that would let the doctors know that they have leeway to actually treat a person who has a legitimate problem without being afraid they're going to go contrary to this law. So my goal would be to clarify the law without changing it.
Right.
That's what we're looking at doing. And we've been working with attorneys at the national level who study this all the time, and they've given us some really good language. So I don't know for sure if a bill will be filed, but it may be.
Okay.
And that'll be really up to our friends in the legislature as to whether they want to file it. Because, as you know, neither you nor I can file a bill.
Right.
We can come up with the idea, we show it to the lawmakers, and if they say, yeah, that's a great idea, I'll be glad to sponsor that, then we're off and running. If they look at it and say, nah, not now, then that's where we are, and so we are really at their mercy in that regard.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
stay tuned on that one.
Absolutely. Yeah. Which not only stay tuned, but we can, within the pro-life community, we need to also stay very engaged on education and not go, okay, well, we won that and put our, put all our stuff away that we've had out this summer educating people.
Yeah.
That doesn't stop because we know that they're going to come back.
Right.
We expect it.
A friend of mine who's now passed away, but he said one day, I think a lot of times Christians quit when they win and they quit when they lose.
Yes. I would agree with that.
And that's what he said. And I thought, oh, say it isn't so. But maybe it's so. What we need to do, we came out on the prevailing side on the abortion measure this year, but I've just brought a person on my staff one of their jobs is to try to keep the network of people that we developed to work against the abortion measure. Just keep that network alive.
Right.
Keep the people engaged so that we don't have to build a statewide network from scratch.
Right.
Because Arkansas is a small state until you try to cover it all. And then you say, boy, we need a coordinator in Union County. Who do we know in Alvarado? And we need one in Columbia County. Who do we know in Magnolia? And we need one in Lafayette County. Who do we know in Louisville? And all of a sudden, you're building an entire grassroots army.
Right.
And we did that pretty well during the campaign against the abortion measure. but I don't want those people to just drift away.
Right. Yeah.
So
Vicky and I constantly messaging each other to get people at different locations. Me kind of covering this area here, Central Arkansas, she covering at the Cabot and all that area. And you're fast and furious on trying to get these areas covered.
well, yeah.
But we need more troops.
Well, we do.
More troops.
And there was just an amazing story from Bradley County down in Warren. The pro-abortion people had this caravan of pro-abortion canvassers that were getting signatures on petitions, and they were hitting like little towns like Hampton and so forth. And we learned they were headed to Warren, Arkansas. This whole caravan, van load of pro-abortion people from Little Rock and all, they were down there getting signatures. And so our network, your network, they were waiting for those people when they rolled into Warren, Arkansas, and wherever they set up with their petitions, the good guys were out there with decline to sign posters urging people in Warren not to sign the petition.
Right.
And I thought, this is a great network, and these are great people, and we thoroughly enjoyed working with them.
It was a bolstering supper. Tell you that. We were.
Well, I was in Hope, and I was in Brinkley, and my wife thought I was going to get arrested in Brinkley, but it worked out okay.
You didn't have to come bail you out.
No, we worked out fine. Had a little discussion with the police, and they let us stay.
Wonderful. Let's talk about the religious liberty. Let's talk about that, the religious freedom. Tell me.
Well, we have to always try to be sure that we have religious freedom, because if we don't have religious freedom, I don't even know if we got any other freedoms. Because religious freedom is the freedom to act on what you really believe.
That's right.
And if you can't act on your sincerely held beliefs, without hurting anybody, of course, then I just wonder if you really have any freedom at all.
Right.
And that's why in the First Amendment, it talks about religious freedom. And yet the anti-Christian forces out there would love to purge Christianity especially, but religion, from the public square. They would say, well, stay in your church. In fact, an attorney with the ACLU asked me out at the Capitol one time. She said, Jerry, why is it you say you need more religious freedom? There's a church on every corner. And I thought for a little bit, and I don't remember what I said to her, but here's what I've decided about that. Jesus said, go.
Yes.
Go. And that means not to church, although it does mean that.
Right.
But when he says go into all the world, then sure, that's the pew on Sunday morning, but it's the community on Monday morning.
Right.
And elsewhere. And so what they want to do is prevent the spread of Christianity, I believe. And so I'll give you an example of what we're trying to deal with. In some places, schools have said, you want to be a counselor? All right. You come to our school here, but you're going to have to sign a pledge to get a diploma that you will counsel people that homosexuality is normal.
Mm-hmm.
And people say, well, that goes against my beliefs. And they say, well, I'm sorry, but we won't give you a diploma unless you bow to our philosophy. And so I don't think anybody should be denied a diploma or a degree based on somebody trying to get them to violate their sincerely held religious beliefs.
Wow.
And so we have a law that addresses some of that. Think about promotions, certifications, diplomas, graduations, all those things. There are people out there that are gatekeepers, that are anti-Christian, that want to say, nope, you have this Christian belief, nope, you can't be a doctor, you can't be a counselor, you can't be a this or that. And I'm like, well, then that's not really religious freedom, is it?
That's right.
And so we're trying to address some of those things. The other area that's kind of in that same neck of the woods is we don't believe schools ought to keep secrets from parents about maybe the child starts talking about changing their gender or something like that. And the school says, well, we'll help you, but we won't tell mom and daddy about it.
Right.
And we need some parental rights legislation in that area. And that kind of leads over into religious issues and faith and morals and all those things. So there's always plenty of work to do at the Capitol. In case you haven't figured that out. But, Arkansas ranks number 4 in the nation in religious freedom. So we're pretty good.
Right.
And then, of course, we rank number 1 and have for about 5 years as being the most pro-life state. So I would really give credit to our lawmakers who have done really well with passing a good legislation. In fact, I think our legislature in Arkansas might be the most conservative in America. Pretty close to it.
Okay.
I really believe they are. Is there room for improvement? Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. There's a lot of room for improvement. But overall, I can compare it to what it was like in the 90s when most everybody out there was, they treated us so disrespectfully. And not that I deserved a lot of respect, but they called us names. They called us the God Squad. They laughed at us, made fun of the ladies that were volunteering with us. And, we just kept going back, and kept working. And I realized what we were doing at the Capitol was not an event. It was a big, long process.
Right. That's right.
And people who go to the Capitol to pass a bill and think this is an event. Well, yeah, it's kind of got its thrilling parts, but we worked 10 years to get one pro-life bill passed.
Yeah.
That was not an event. That was a process. And by the grace of God, we prevailed.
And going back to a statement that you made earlier, you didn't stop.
Correct.
And we've not stopped. And that's so important that we don't go, oh, okay, well, we got that passed, and then we walk away. All is well, because it's not. That there's going to be challenges coming, and we've got to stay on top of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, in fact, people will try to undo the good that you did.
That's right.
So you have to really stay on it, or they'll come out there and they'll undermine all the good work that you did if you don't work at it. So there's just this diligence that we all need. And by the grace of God, we've been able to grow our staff at Family Council. There are 4 of us who go out there and lobby at the Capitol, talk about issues and all that. Altogether, we have 13 people. Some are part-time. But our reach is much broader than just in the legislature. But when the legislature is in session, that's our focus.
Right.
And they'll be in session from now until probably around tax day, maybe 1st of May at the latest. By then, they will have run over 2,000 bills through there.
Yep.
And over 1,000 will have passed. And so we'll have 1,000 new laws.
Right. Right.
Or amendments, one or the other. And people wonder, why do we need lawyers? Well, they don't call them lawmakers for nothing.
That's right.
They're making a lot of laws.
Talking about the religious freedom, I feel that it's important, not only as my independent, personal religious freedoms, but for business owners, small business owners. So I think that it's really important that their religious freedoms are protected. And so what have you heard, if anything, about that?
Well, we worked some with small businesses. If you're a small business and you say, I don't want to participate in a marriage celebration, certain one, because of my beliefs. Now that you and I would say it's a free country, you run a business, you ought to be able to do business with the people that you want to do business with, according to your beliefs and so forth. And we know that hasn't been so around the country. People get sued. Even if you prevail, they just grind you into the dirt because they keep you in court as a business owner for years.
Yes.
And they drag your name through the mud and call you all kinds of things. And so we have in Arkansas a pretty good level of protection for businesses, but I'm having trouble remembering exactly how we are strengthening the rights of businesses in our new law that we're working on. But I believe it says something to the effect that no person, no church, no organization, no business can be forced to participate in a marriage that goes against their religious beliefs. So I think it comes more directly out and says it. Now, we have a religious freedom restoration law that says you have religious freedom, but a lot of people will say, yeah, you got religious freedom, but you still got to do my photos or do my wedding, or you've got to allow this person to be employed at your shop, even though they go against your beliefs. I think this will strengthen that. So bottom line is, I believe we'll have some legislation to strengthen the rights of business owners and others.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, I know one of the other things that you're working on, this we'll kind of wrap it up, is talking about the importance of the set of bills for this section that clarifies Arkansas's initiative laws, which is House Bill 1221
Right.
and House Bill 1222.
Right.
Those are sponsored by David Ray, Representative David Ray and Senator Kim Hammer. These bills aim to clarify Arkansas's laws concerning ballot initiatives and referendums. House Bill 2021 ensures that petition signers expire at the end of the general election cycle, preventing canvassers from collecting and using signatures across multiple cycles. And House Bill 1222 clarifies that Arkansas Attorney General cannot approve ballot measures that conflict with the U.S. Constitution and federal law. Mm-hmm. So, Jerry, from your perspective, why is it important to establish these clarifications in Arkansas's initiative process?
Well, I'll use the marijuana measure as an example. Marijuana is still illegal under federal law. And yet the way the law prescribes the role of the Attorney General, even if a measure violates federal law, he still has to certify it.
Right.
If the ballot title and the popular name and all that align properly, when you read the law as, what the AG's role is in that, I don't believe he could refuse to certify something based on it being against federal law. Mm. Now, you'd think, well, surely he could do that. Well, he might. But as soon as he does, he's going to get sued. It's all going to go to the Supreme Court, and they're going to wrangle about it. So I don't see anything wrong with saying he can't certify something that goes against the federal law. And so that's an area where I think we need to look. Now, the other one about stale signatures is kind of a no-brainer, because you shouldn't be able to gather signatures for an abortion measure for 10 years.
Right.
And then finally turn them all in.
Right.
And so there ought to be a window of time there. So I think that one's a practical one. But, Kandi, one that you and I were talking about off camera, I wish we could do something about readability.
Yes.
Don't you get frustrated when you go into the voting booth and there is all this fine print for some issue that you don't know much about?
Right.
And they're wanting you to vote for it or against it. The marijuana amendment that was offered that failed, that didn't make the ballot this past year, was 2,000 words long.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a bunch of legal stuff that you would have really had to have the Constitution of Arkansas and this amendment both side by side, reading them together to be able to comprehend it.
Right.
That is not fair to the voter, to treat the voter that way, to put something like that on them and say, now, you figure this out.
Correct.
There ought to be a way to fix that.
Right.
And some states have readability laws, say it has to be readable and understandable to the average person. They even have laws about how many words some of the measures could be, because the original marijuana law that passed in Arkansas was 10,000 words long.
Mm-hmm. Mm. And even what we had also talked about was the on these ballot initiatives, like with the abortion amendment, the title was extremely misleading to
That's right.
voters.
Yeah. And see, here's the thing. If I told lies about you as a person, you could sue me. And you should if I'm doing that. You can lie all day long about a ballot measure, and there's nobody to cry to stop you.
Right.
Because a ballot measure is not a person.
Right.
So you can lie all day long about what the measure would do and just trick people, run ads, all kinds of stuff. And there is nobody to govern that area. And so that's why people have got to be really, really diligent with these ballot measures, and do not just listen to the sound bites, pay no attention to all the ads. You got to really dig down deep and talk to people that really understand these issues.
Right.
That's why we publish a voter guide.
Yes.
We do our best to give an unbiased rundown of these ballot measures so that people can cut through all that static. Otherwise, you're just at the mercy of what you see on TV.
Yeah.
And that's bad.
I mean, when they put that abortion amendment out, the title alone was almost a page long. And it was extremely misleading. And I mean, that's before you even get to the meat of what it is, right?
And the way the terminology in there, they had statements like that a doctor could do an abortion if in his good faith judgment.
Right.
Well, that's different than reasonable medical judgment.
Right.
But most people don't know that.
Yeah.
Good faith judgment says, well, I thought it was a good idea. But reasonable medical judgment means that's what any other reasonable doctor would do.
Right.
That's a big difference.
Yes.
But see, most people read those words and they don't know that that's how the courts interpret those.
That's right.
And so it's just that system is broken and needs to be fixed.
Absolutely. I agree. Well, Jerry, I want to thank you for your time today and for the work that you all do at Family Council. It is such a blessing to the state of Arkansas, and I love your voter guide that you put out every year.
Well, thank you.
And just thankful for the conservative values that you all stand on. How can our listeners stay informed and support Family Council's efforts?
Well, I appreciate you asking that. They can go to familycouncil.org online and read all about us. And there's a donate button on there. We are supported entirely by charitable donations from individuals and churches. That's it. You know, we're not funded by anything government or any of those things. And so we appreciate everybody who helps us out that way. But familycouncil.org is the best way to find us. The other thing I would like to emphasize is this is a partnership. We have an office and a staff 2 blocks from the state capitol. We can go over there and help make your voice, the voice of your listeners, heard.
Yes.
And I know not everybody can do that. Not everybody can take off work and go to the Capitol. So we're there to speak up for the things that we all hear in church on Sunday morning.
Right.
That's what we're there to do. And so when people support us, they're saying, Jerry, I can't go to the Capitol, but I want you to go. And that really helps us. When they pray for us, their kind words, their financial support, all that matters a bunch.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Jerry, thank you for your time today, and good luck this session up at the Capitol. I know that I see you every time I'm up there, and so that's always and very busy.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and thank you for all that you do here in the state of Arkansas.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Well, that wraps up today's episode of Arkansas First Reports. I want to invite you to follow Arkansas First News on Facebook, X, subscribe to our contributors' content at arkansasfirst.com, and that's arkansas1st.com. And catch my podcast, Arkansas First Reports, on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music,